Okay, you got it.
Things, and so you'll kind of see a theme. We're glad you're here. I'm Sean McMullen, your alumni director. Sheryl,
Sheryl Rowe. This is my 38th year that I just finished, and I'm the longest serving person on campus.
I thought we'd start by going around. I know we've all introduced ourselves, but let's do it on camera. Dennis, would you start? Tell us your name and your class year.
So Dennis Lynch, class of '87. I've had one boy come through here already, Connor, who's a freshman at Tech. I got Jack, who hopefully just finished sophomore year, just finished up exams. And then I've got my daughter Maggie, who's a 7th grader going to 8th grade at St. Rita, and she's still hoping Jesuit goes co-ed next year.
Chris Cook, class of '86. I've got one son who will be a freshman at Jesuit next year.
Stuart, Schutze. I was class of '89. I'm the youngster in the group. I have 6 kids. My wife works here now, so she works very closely with Sean. I've graduated one. He's a sophomore at Baylor. I've got one that just graduated Saturday, so that's 2 out of here. And I've got a sophomore rising to junior, same class as Dennis.
Mike Geisler, class of '81. My son just graduated last weekend, and he's headed off to SMU.
Scott Jackson, 82, and I've got a rising senior.
Jim Hever, class of '82. I just had 2 graduate from here, so I had a class of 12 and a class of 15.
Greg Ave, class of '82 as well. Represent. And I have 2 sons, one of which is at Cistercian and the other which is at Christ the King.
Fantastic. One of the things that we really want to get into tonight is just to hear about it. We want to talk Jesuit. So totally relaxed. Tell us how you feel. I'm going to start off with Scott. Scott, I want you to tell me why Jesuit. Why did you decide to come here as opposed to go somewhere else?
It's pretty interesting. I only applied to one high school. I didn't have a backup plan. I don't know why I wanted to go here. I met Father Cope the very first interview, and I told my parents when I came back that that's where I wanted to go to school. I had no idea that they couldn't afford to send me to school here. Even though it was pretty inexpensive when we went, I didn't know my grandparents, my dad, my aunt were all helping pay tuition at the time. So it was a really big deal for my parents to send me to school, but I was the oldest of 4. They were starting a real estate company. I had, younger brothers and sisters, and so my parents spent 0 time out here. And so, thank God these guys figured out how to raise us.
Absolutely.
And ladies.
That's right.
And ladies. But, I didn't know any of that when I came into this. I just came to school here. But it was just a great experience. I had a great time being able to come to school here.
Dennis, what made Jesuit your destination?
I honestly didn't know there was a choice. I went to school at St. Rita, and I'm the oldest boy. I have twin brothers who are 7 years my junior who attended here, but I honestly don't really have vivid memories of interviews or anything, but it was right next door. And so it was a very easy, to even say there was a decision. I don't even think it was a decision. It was just walk across the street and start coming to school here. And here we are, 30 years later.
I don't know that I had a choice. I think my parents were determined that I would be here, and I was the oldest of 4, and my mom and dad met at St. Louis U, and I was born on campus at St. Louis U back in the day, and so they had a very strong Jesuit experience from that, and I remember my mom telling me the Jesuits are the brightest men in the world, and that kind of inspired me. That got me excited.
Greg, what about you?
I had an older sister who had graduated from Ursuline and an older brother who graduated from Jesuit the year before I started here. And I was bound and determined not to come to Jesuit because I did not want to follow anybody. So my father, being a big believer in Catholic education, cut a shrewd deal with me. He said, "I'll tell you what, I wanted to go to WTY because I thought that's what I needed to do." We made an agreement that if I got a certain grade point average at the end of my freshman year, if I hit it, I could choose where I went from there. And he thought it was so high that he wouldn't have to worry about it. And I actually managed to beat it. But after I came here my freshman year, there was no looking back for me. I drank the Kool-Aid.
I love it. Got our hooks in you. I love that. Jim?
Being the bottom of 6 kids, I didn't really have a choice. My 2 brothers came here, so much to the same thing. It was just basically when you left parochial school, this was your next stop. Lynch was kind of an option, I guess, at a certain point, but being that my brother graduated here in '78, and my other brother was in '72, it was, that's where you're going to go. You're going that direction. So it was a good choice my parents made, and obviously I think the choice we made for our 2 boys has paid off real well.
So I had been in public school through middle school, and in 8th grade I was just bored silly. I didn't feel like the school was challenging, and I wanted something different, more of a structure. And I literally overheard some buddies of mine in the hallway talking about they were going to apply to Jesuit. So I came home and told I found out the date and came home and told my mom, hey, I need you to take me here on this date so I can apply for Jesuit. She said, okay. So we drove over and I took the test, got in, and absolutely loved it. For me, it was the culture, the integrity, for the first time in my life, having theology in school, part of it. So it was a great choice for me, and certainly more challenging academically.
Much like Jim, I was the youngest of a blended family of 12, and so I had 3 brothers when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. I had 3 brothers who were coming through late 70s and 80 and 81. So it was a pride point for me. I was like a Texan in the Northeast. When I was around my public school friends, it was, man, I'm going to Jesuit one day. This is going to be great. I can't wait to get out of here. So it was predestined pretty much for me too.
That's how I was also. I knew I was coming here no matter what. So I went and bounced around the parochial league and decided St. Rita was the best chance right across the street. So love it. What were you guys involved in when you were at Jesuit?
I was in the band.
Were you?
Yeah.
What'd you play?
Trumpet. And I remember Pasquale approaching me my senior year because 3 of the biggest guys in school were all in the band. And he kept on trying to get us, I want to go on my football team. He kept on trying to talk us into that. So there were no takers.
I gravitated towards athletics, so I did basketball 4 years and then baseball 4 years. Played football freshman year, and just I kind of small, just I got sick of getting kicked around after 1 year. So I kind of gravitated more to the athletic side of it, and then did some student council things and some stuff like that. But I was kind of more on the athletic side. What you?
Football 4 years. My youngest, who's a 10-year-old, always likes to say, so you played football at Jesuit? And I say, I did. And he said, was football different back then? To which I respond, yes. But that and student council were probably consumed most of my interests at the time.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, we had a group of tennis guys, and tennis was kind of neat back then because there was a inter-city league with all the different schools, and so we were going to tournaments, and we knew people from like Highlands and Allen Park and just about every school in the urban area. We were going to tournaments, meeting new people each weekend, and so the group of us, and then a bunch of us, used to love up at Brookhaven. They had the outdoor courts, and we could play on those things till like midnight. And we would get up there, and a bunch of us from different schools would meet, hang out at Brookhaven on the outside courts where they weren't checking us, and have the music blaring out of a jam box, and spend a lot of Friday and Saturday nights goofing around doing stuff like that.
Interesting. Chris, what about you?
So I was football my freshman year and swimming freshman, sophomore, and then cheerleading my senior year. Someone told me you could hang out with the Ursuline girls for most of the year, at football games. It's like, where do I sign up for that deal? So we had a fun group. It was fun. But my daughter has asked, since she's a cheerleader from Ursuline now, and has since asked, Dad, has this cheerleading thing changed? I said, yeah, I think so. I think it's a lot. I guess they don't have a bunch of guys doing it. It used to be like the yell leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's been a couple years since we've had a male cheerleader.
Yeah.
Interesting. Stuart, what about you? What'd you do at Jesuit?
I did a number of sports. I started out at football. I did basketball for 2 years. I made the tennis team as a sophomore, and then it was when we were the JV basketball team was asked to run with the cross country team in early season workouts just to get us in shape, but I was able to keep up with them, and we just kind of talked to them about the sport. I had no idea what it was. And at the end, when they reported that there was one basketball player that stayed with the cross country runners, I had Mike Jensen took the opportunity to talk to one of his bench warmers and say, "Hey, look, if you want to try this cross country thing, it might be a good sport for you." So that became my sport ultimately. That I did as a varsity athlete, and then ran track a couple of injury plagued years of track too, and then was able to compete in college too. So that kind of became a lifelong sport for me. So it was introduced by basketball conditioning under Mike Jensen, and so it was that was most of my time spent.
Mike Jensen.
There he is. Yep.
I got to ask, how long's the hair in the back on that picture?
It's pretty
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Mustache going.
Straight out of the 70s.
So I loved Coach Jensen. He was great.
Let's talk tradition. Current students have their traditions. I want to hear about what it was like when you guys were students. Tell me about, I think, Mike, were you telling me about name tags started when you were a student?
Yeah, well, I think we were the first class that didn't have to wear beanies, and
Okay.
and I remember that learning everybody's name was a big deal. You had to learn them, and I remember Father Koch always had everybody's name down before anybody else could. It was just impressive. That made the kids feel so welcome, and it also was something you took seriously.
Interesting.
I think we had the worst uniforms of any class of freshmen ever.
That mustard yellow.
We had like a yellow bounty paper towel looking gold jacket with our name tag on it.
Yeah, I think
And then we had houndstooth, like kind of checked with brown pants that were just really bad.
the gold jacket was the freshman.
I mean, it's sort of like we were Century 21 salesmen, but without the brown pants. And like no tie that your dad gave you matched it. And then the ties,
No tie matched it.
the ties that we got, like when you tied the knot, it'd be like the size of a softball or something on you. And I was like, man, this really looks poor. It's too bad the pictures don't come in color back then. But I just remember our freshman class, we really didn't look very good.
I think our tradition wasn't it freshmen wore khaki pants?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we had a blue blazer, with the patch. But I remember being a sophomore thinking, there's no way I'm going to wear khaki pants.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to think you're a freshman. So you get, gray pants or blue pants. And then as a senior, then you could wear your, whatever
Any
sport
jacket,
coat.
right.
Or I think Fridays were maybe letter jacket day or something
Yeah.
like that.
I would think it was really to make sure that we really stood out as freshmen. So when you came down that senior hallway to
Right.
go to the cafeteria, that they knew that you were a freshman.
Target.
They were trying to blend us a little more, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just can remember, I was just like, I hope I don't have to talk to anybody.
Do you guys remember that you had to button your top button?
Oh, yeah.
And I made it through through my second semester, or I was on my second semester senior year without ever buttoning my top button. The theater teacher at the time caught me, and he says, "You're going to either try out for my play, or you get PHTFN till further notice, right?" So he wanted me to be Lenny of Mice and Men, and I took PH for a month. So.
Did you really?
I would have done the exact same thing. I understand. That's good. Now you mentioned a senior hallway. Are you talking about between the senior
Glass
courtyard?
breezeway.
Yeah. Okay, we heard a little bit about this last night with the 70s. So was that still kind of? I'm going to use the word gauntlet.
The
For a
seniors
freshman?
will all be sitting on the side of the hallway as you're walking towards the cafeteria.
And then the senior courtyard
Right.
was always right there. And they would do that little trick where they'd pull the dollar bill down the thing and they'd try to get you into the. But then you had to run. The deal was if you wanted to become the freshman that got poked out, was the guy that got through.
So,
And then the varsity locker room was the other one that I truly remember because I remember Mike Flynn chased me out of there one day. I checked it, and he was in the jacuzzi, and I ran through there real quick, and he chased me out the back door with nothing on but Mike Flynn, and out to the parking lot, and I was like, oh, thank God for the parking lot. But I paid for it the next day. I do know that.
Did y'all do any kind of senior pranks, or what were the traditions back then?
We had there were a couple guys. I did not drive this. They were doing construction on Inwood, and so there were these big barriers on Inwood that were a little further down. He pulled them over. He and a group of guys pulled them over, where they routed all the traffic in the morning coming down Inwood through the parking lot, and it was an hour of traffic coming right through the school. The normal school going through, routed it all the way through the school until finally somebody said, "Hey, there's nothing? Why don't we move these things back?" But that, and then we had, of course, all the farm animals in the courtyard, and the pigs and the goat and a donkey or something out there running around. Yes, and chickens.
Yeah.
Allegedly, how would those get into a courtyard? Just curious.
Through a back door.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was facilitated by one of the priests.
Aha.
Yes,
Okay.
which I thought was
Inside
fun. Yeah.
Do you remember Mark Sullivan's thing?
I did.
Do you remember when we took the doors and everything off and left it in the parking lot, and then we picked it up and we put it in the gym and shimmied that car because it's so light we could pick it up, and then he came out looking for his car and like the doors were in the spot. The windshield was laying out there. The thing. And he's like, "Where's the car?" It's like it's in the gym.
So do any of you guys remember that Jesuit used to have their own exit off the toll road? Jesuit College Prep?
I do remember that. Yeah.
That died shortly after I graduated because they extended the toll road north of LBJ. But they used to stop at Harvest Hill.
So we heard a little bit about that story last night, and I'll share it with you. From what we understood, Bishop Lynch would come and take a certain letter off. So it would say Jesuit College Preschool. And so that went on and on and on, and finally they took the sign down. So we just learned that. That's why we love these kind of stories. So yeah, you're absolutely right on that. Kind of cool.
There was such animosity between Jesuit and Lynch in my days.
Was there? Tell us about it. Let's hear about that.
Well, it was fierce. I mean, I think they were always trying to manage things from getting out of control, and it was just rivalry on all sides, but it definitely focused around football.
I do remember, God, it was our freshman or sophomore year, driving to Lynch for a football game, and someone, a group of guys had gotten a can or cans of gold paint or yellow paint, and there was a stripe down LBJ from like Abrams to Ferguson. It was just one yellow stripe that Jesuit had painted from, basically our route from our school to their school. It was there for a long, long time.
I remember, like, Louisville would schedule us for their homecoming.
Yeah.
And I remember we went one year, and there's, like, no place for anybody for Jesuit to even sit. And so we're, like, standing around
Your
the
senior
fence.
year, we won 7-6.
Yeah, we beat them, and they were supposed to be number one in the state. It was
Yeah.
their homecoming.
And at homecoming, and I remember going to that, standing around a fence, because we couldn't even sit.
But the BL basketball games. I know
Man.
Dennis was there for the.
That was-
I'm
those
telling
were-
you that
the basketball
gym
games, that
for
was
those
like
BL
your-
hoops games was
It
the
was.
coolest
Hoping
thing.
It was the
fight.
highlight
It
of
was like a
my.
knife
It was
fight.
sort of as a I guess watching games. That was the highlight.
Oh, yeah,
game
those were
of
great.
any of my all 4 years, and it was especially when Campese was playing. David Campese
Yeah,
was
he was
playing
at
for. He was your grade, yeah.
Yeah. Stephen Howard was a year behind him.
Yeah, a future Utah Jazz player. So and then that Jesuit team was fantastic at the time. So both teams were really
Yeah.
good.
Interesting. Okay, now
I
that,
remember
go ahead.
something that, because I grew up playing soccer at St. Thomas, and I didn't play soccer for Jesuit, but I remember Coach DeLong came along, and I mean, Matt Miller in our class was like supposed to be like the next Pele or something. He was unbelievable, but the soccer program was off the charts, and and I think was it Coach Meinster or that started all of it. But we had some incredible soccer players that were coming out of here.
I remember we had Chris Helling was the varsity goaler. He was a good friend of mine freshman year. And sophomore year, a guy transferred in from Highland Park, Sam Bloom, also a state level. So both these guys were, on the state team. Now they're both on the Jesuit team competing for the position, which was brutal, but they're great friends still today because of that. And one became the goalie, Chris became the goalie at Stanford, and Sam became the goalie at Virginia. So it was incredible. DeLong just did an incredible job pulling together that team.
Swimming was the one that was the big one our year. I mean, you look back in the couple of years, it was the Spaldings and the Geehans, and you start looking at those guys, and they were all Americans going out to Stanford and UT, and it's like, it was a small sport, and it was always that one at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they had to go to Lowe's, and it was like you never saw them. Nobody ever went to one of their swimming meets, but you'd see them in the paper all the time, and it was like, okay, there's the boys that are doing it.
And same thing with soccer too. I mean, Matt Miller was drafted out of high school, but into the professionals, first round draft pick. He may have been the first professional draft pick out of Jesuit.
Right.
But I think, like all the sports and stuff, that was fine. But then you look at all the academic things that people were doing, or, I remember being in the play over at Ursuline and doing stuff. But
I don't know about the years after us, but the most important class I took at Jesuit was not taught at Jesuit. It was typing at Ursuline.
We heard about this last night.
Which was without a doubt was probably the class I used on a daily basis the most, that it's proved to be the most useful to.
That was gone by the time
I remember.
That's I knew at some point in time.
it was a no-fly zone when we were here. I didn't see a girl in a classroom that wasn't my teacher for 4 years. I remember showing up at Notre Dame thinking, man, this is great with co-ed classes. I just remember, if there was some of the Ursuline girls would come over after school for whatever, cheerleader and whatever, that was like, everybody, okay, there's a girl around.
Right.
We definitely did not have that experience. I didn't, and I don't remember it.
What else was down?
I had a sister in '83.
Just typing for us was there, and then this was our senior year. They came for calculus, honors cal, and
Biology.
physics. Yeah, and
really?
physics our senior. Biology was our freshman year. So
No, AP.
Well, I had AP biology.
Yeah,
AP biology they had.
Yeah.
But I had a sister, '83, and she'd get let out on the back of the school at Ursuline, and so I could cruise around the very back. And I mean, I had a carload of guys that were ready. So my carpool from St. Thomas over there is like people were like jockeying who could get on it so that we could drive behind Ursuline and park and wait for her.
Well, that's funny you mentioned cars. I remember so I drove a '79 yellow Chevy station wagon with like faux leather seats, and it was, it actually got my brothers through here.
That's right.
It got me to Notre Dame and back. I think we counted 6 round trips between me and my sister. So it was never, I do remember some kind of higher end cars in the parking lot and being a little jealous of it, but I was very proud of my '79 wagon. So they didn't pick me to cruise the Ursuline parking lot after school.
That's amazing. Tell me about, let's get into academics. Who was your favorite teacher? Who made an impact on you?
Madame Beauvoir, who taught us French. She was an amazing teacher. And she said, you know what, I'll tell you any word you want in French, but you have to ask me in French, and you can't speak any French, you can't speak any English in the classroom. So it was conversational French. And I learned more in those 3 years, and I had never used it. And then we went to Paris 2 years ago, and I couldn't believe how much of it came back to me.
Mine would have to be my junior year English teacher for sure.
Well played.
But I agree with what Mike said. If I had to think of a single reason why I was so excited about Jesuit after my freshman year and wanted to stay beyond my friends that I met and am still incredibly close to this day, where the teachers took a sincere interest in your well-being. And I was talking to Mike Ursing earlier about it. They truly invested in you, and you could feel it, and it made you feel like you mattered, and it kind of made you want to come back for more. At least that was my experience. So, but I agree with Mike. There's a ton that kind of, like I said, Betty Beauvoir taught me a love of math. Gail Rubenspeed was my Cal teacher my senior year. Taught me more about math and made me love it than almost anybody else. There are tons of teachers across the board. It's just you can go on and on. Ones at the time you thought you really, really disliked, and now you look back favorably on because of what they taught you.
Father Calorie sticks out in my mind, and the reason being is I did wrestle because of him, and it was weird to be taught by a man who was wearing a priestly garment, and then the next thing you know, he's playing King of the Mountain with you on the wrestling mat, and it's like, oh my God, can we go back to teaching again? So, and he's one that kind of sticks out in my head as was the biggest impact. And I guess that was junior year.
Do any of you guys remember Father Kitten and some of the other?
Oh,
He
yes.
was our freshman counselor, so our class was. I mean, he was kind of he and Father Coke were kind of
Yeah.
our kind of since Father Coke admitted
Big
us.
music guy.
It was just neat to see teachers could be so cool and so much fun.
I remember David Oglesby, who was the college counselor but taught me freshman English.
Yes.
And he had this cane. He was very, very strict, and he had this cane, and he would come along, and if you were sitting and crossed your legs underneath the desk like that, he would literally whack you on the shins. But you knew the rules in there, and he was a fantastic English teacher. I mean, he was great for a subject that was not my strong suit. I loved coming to class there, and you knew. He never disciplined in an angry way. It was just, the rules, and it was always lighthearted in the way he went about it.
I remember just looking in the book. I remember Mr. Marion, and when we started, we had to take Latin our freshman year, and then go to Spanish or French or whatever. I remember Mr. Marion grabbing me and saying, "You should be in honors Spanish. Like, you can do it." And I was like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "You can do this," And I remember, going ahead and doing, by my senior year, taking honors Spanish, but Father D's and Miss Lanier, they were like, "You can do this."
So one comment, and this is not about a specific teacher, but the program. So some of you guys I know came from parochial schools and through the Catholic system. I didn't. I don't know if you had the same experience, but theology was incredibly impactful for me. I grew up in a family that didn't have a strong faith background, and for me, Jesuit, the 4 years of theology really opened my eyes in something that's really important to my family today. And Jesuit was pivotal, and they challenged us, in a way see today now. Most Catholic institutions are not good about really challenging faith, right? It's here's what you believe, and Jesuit did that. And I told the story early about freshman year, Father Schnadelbach jumping up on his desk first day and saying Jesus didn't exist, and his method was to challenge the kids and to get them to debate back that how they believe that Jesus existed and who he was, and to go stronger in their faith. So it was really impactful. I remember somebody mentioned Unconditional Love. Somebody mentioned that book. We read Unconditional Love and Mere Christianity and a couple of those books that I still keep on my shelf today.
I think the exposure to so many of our memories are with the Jesuits, the Jesuit teachers that we had. And my most impactful teacher was a scholastic at the time. It was his first year here. Most of you probably know him, Father Fitzgerald, or Mr. Fitzgerald at the time. He was my first. And you mentioned your interview with Father Coke, and that was my interview as well with Father Coke. And those initial contact with the Jesuits are some of the most impactful memories that you have. And Father Coke was the best ambassador to this school that you could ask for. And Mr. Fitzgerald, Father Fitzgerald, later he was born to teach teenage boys. I mean, he knew how to get inside their mind and how to entertain them and teach them. He was incredible. And I had the reason why I took Latin. I took Latin that, like you. Even my year we had to take Latin freshman year, and I was like, I want more of this. This guy's amazing. He was such a great example of a Jesuit because he was so well rounded, and he knew he could, from classical music to great philosophers. He wouldn't even have to bat an eye. He could tell you about it and instruct you like he was your teacher right off the bat. Linda Felice, my sophomore American Lit teacher, was probably had the most influence on my writing style and understanding context. And so her class was fantastic. She was a great teacher. She was the theater teacher also when I was there. those are two of the great ones.
I thought something that was really great, and I was pretty shy going through school, but the retreats that we did, and as it went along your senior year and they got smaller, and they did a good job of mixing people up that don't do stuff together all the time. And it was really interesting to be around people that were really popular or really athletic or whatever. And when you're just a group of guys, you know, talking to one another, how many things you had in common, even though you didn't look like somebody had long hair or someone, you know, dressed a different way or whatever. But you had a lot of stuff that was in common. And I remember going off to college thinking, you know, I'm just not going to prejudge anybody. I remember people that I used to think were the slackers or this or that, but I'm just not going to be like that when I went off to school. But I thought they just really did a great job of figuring out how to introduce us to other people and things and ideas and be open to it.
Yeah, the Jesuits and
The Jesuits
in the school.
did.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
community
through the
days
school,
is
yeah.
critical in all that process. And
It seems that the older you get, some of the non-conventional things the Jesuit did seem to stick with me or kind of come back to me more, like community service. You know, I mean, it for someone who's 17 or 18 years old to get out, you know, from beyond your school and do something to that scale and to that degree, you know, it's something I think all of us kind of take with us, whether we know it or not, for the rest of our lives. You know,
They plant a lot of seeds that don't really mature until years later. You become more and more aware.
Well, it was a hassle when you were here, but when you look back, it's those memories are the ones that stick out.
I'm curious, where did y'all do your community service?
I was at Scottish Rite.
Scottish Rite.
And you know, the upside is that the group that went down there, a lot of us were football players that went down, and at the end of it, we were there. What they call us recreational therapy. They put us all in wheelchairs, and we had to play them in football against them. And you know, here are these guys that supposedly are great athletes and doing all this stuff, and then now you're in a world that's uncomfortable. And these kids had a field day with us. I mean, it was up and down, and it was the doctors were laughing, the nurses were laughing, and it was a hassle. You went on Wednesdays, and it was. But this was one of those. I mean, you know, however long ago it is, 82 to now. You look back and go, okay, that's the one that sticks right there in the back.
I went to Parkland. We saw some crazy things. Just, people that would, Hispanic couple would drop their kids off and leave because they were afraid. And nobody would know this kid's name for weeks until the family would come back trying to check on the child. Just strange stuff. You had to do extra hours. I remember we had a lady had been living in a kind of a really cheap hotel, and the hotel sold and was closing, and we moved her into the projects, and she had nothing. I mean, the hotel gave her a bed and a TV, but we get in the projects and there's no light bulbs. So we ended up buying her food, and this is a lady that doesn't have a car. That how's she going to get food? I mean, it was very eye-opening as a young person.
Leap Top, which was a juvenile, kind of a halfway house that they could get juvenile offenders got sent over to the school. It was a resident school. They were technically in juvenile custody, and so we tutored them, which of course was, like all community service, incredibly eye-opening because they would be deficient in whatever the subject by 5 and 6 grades, but it also had a huge social aspect to it. Like Scott was saying, I can remember exactly who I did it with, and what we did, coming and going to community service every time we had it. So it just forms a lasting impression on you, and you kind of makes you appreciate what you have. You get something out of it. And have some fun doing it too.
Sure.
I was at Notre Dame Special School for mentally handicapped kids, and it was awesome. It was, again, I think, that's prior to that, I had never had any experience of that, but I walked away from Jesuit after 4 years knowing that whatever I did, there needed to be that component of giving back, and the company I started, it was the very foundation of that is, here's what we're here more than about just making a profit. We're here to make the community that we serve a lot better. And so we did that in our own way, and that came 100% directly from Jesuit.
One of the other institutions, and I'm just going to bring it up because it's come up every time. I would like to know how the disciplinary rules were when you guys were here. Who was your disciplinarian? I know we maybe had two different ones, is my understanding. I want to.
So we had Mr. Hefner for a couple of years, and he scared the tar out of everybody. And there were stories about him, teaching hand-to-hand combat in Korea and all of that. I think that it was real. But gosh, I think that was our disciplinary.
We had our freshman year. We had Hefner, and then Mike Ursing was the disciplinarian our senior year.
Yeah, I had Ursing all 4 years, and you did not want to end up in Ursing's office. The only penance all I can ever remember getting was the collar unbutton thing, because your neck is growing so big when you're, that age.
Sure.
And I could never button, I had the collar extenders and all that, and then I'd end up in penance hall. Exactly.
What was penance hall like then, in the 80s?
I just remember early mornings,
Early in the morning.
watching the clock.
That's it.
Couldn't do homework. All you had to do was stay awake and watch that clock. And 60 minutes never was so long.
Yeah, I get for not having my collar buttoned or something really silly like that. And from where we lived, it was a long ways away. And so my dad drove me just one time, and I was like, I'm never riding in his car like this again. I'm like, I don't care what I have to do. There's no way I'm getting penance hall again. And I mean, he is doing double left turns around the traffic and stuff to come over here and just giving me an earful the entire way.
And I think we went 8-track to cassette in this group, right? Is that about right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I know the 80s a little bit here.
What was
Remember that?
going on with band back in that day? Anything particular?
Freshman year we had a great band director that I think we made straight perfect scores in that year, and and it was interesting because a lot of the jazz band was really kind of the cool thing to be a part of, and that was what a lot of the teachers like Pat Corman used to play in it, and so that was a real fun group, and it's fun to do something with teachers like that. This Matt McCready came in, and so that was my junior year, and man, he changed things, and it was I learned a ton around him, and he started the flag corps and all of this other stuff, and so during our years there were a lot of girls around us, and that was a lot of fun. I think for me, I never learned anything about sports when I was a kid, and that music kept me out of a lot of trouble, and it got me in with a great group of people.
It made me think about something. Two things. You said the flag corps. Rangerettes were around when you guys were a Jesuit.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. Was that a prominent thing with the girls that y'all knew that they were Rets? Or
I'd say it was extremely popular.
extremely?
Yes.
Okay.
When I thought, and the cheerleaders too, that was, for a lot of guys that were doing that, that was a pretty big deal. I mean, they were good.
Right.
Some of them going on to college to be college cheerleaders, and people quitting football to be a cheerleader and stuff like that. I mean, it was a different caliber.
I was looking at the guys in our class; they were the cool guys that were cheerleaders back then.
They tried out for it. It was competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, and there was a hierarchy amongst the Rangerettes. I mean, it was. Yeah, I was going to grab the yearbook from our years, but I bet you, I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but I bet you there was 35, 40 girls in it.
Yeah.
It outnumbered the band.
And do you guys remember your Big Brothers?
I was going to ask y'all about Big Brothers. I do. Yeah. Were any of y'all Big Brothers?
I wanted to be one so bad.
Sure. And there was a grade requirement. I remember that.
Yeah. So when we were freshmen, it was anyone who wanted to be a Big Brother in the senior class could be one. So, if it wasn't a 1-to-1, it was close to it. So I remember who mine was. I see him all the time. Actually, he's a lawyer here in Dallas. His name's Sheryl. It was a great program, and I remember our senior year, Father Zimmerman changed it. Brian changed it, and it was 3 Big Brothers per homeroom class.
Yeah.
So there was 3 Big Brothers per homeroom class. So basically, it was you applied, and you had to have, it was a grade requirement, and there was a screening process. So it was kind of a a different structure
Sure.
than what we experienced as freshmen. It was different when we got to be seniors.
Well, we've got just a few more minutes. I'm just going to ask you one more question. And Jesuit, what does it mean to you? Why are you guys all, everybody as I look around is still involved in Jesuit in one way, shape, or form? What does Jesuit mean to you?
You're welcomed back. You talk to other people that went to other high schools, whatever the high school it was, they'd never go back to the high school. They'd never go back for any reason. So it's Jesuit welcomes you back, number one, and then when you become, through your sons, when you become part of the parents groups or whatever it is, you're kind of locked back in.
Yeah, it's the same answer that I remember my '78 grad brother when I was asking him what makes Jesuit different than at the time I was in Richardson ISD, and I was asking, even though I knew I was going to go there, I was like, well, how's it different than like Richardson or something? It's community, and at the time it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I was probably a 7th grade kid, going to public school. That didn't mean a lot, but that's exactly what the answer that resonates with me is it's what distinguishes us, I think, is the community that we've built. It's the brotherhood that you have, and that brings you back.
Yeah, it's not one or two friends. It's a huge group of people that is a community. I'll never forget when we started doing the kind of current generation of alumni parties, and everybody that I knew back then and still know now asked me the same question. So you guys go back, you're alumni, and you go back to your high school for an alumni party. Why? And that's the answer. And people who haven't experienced it don't understand it, and it's really hard to articulate to them that it's a sense of community and belonging that you buy into when you start here as a freshman, and it doesn't end when you walk out the door.
And it's multi-generational. I mean, it spans decades of people graduating from this place. You feel as you age out of this place, you feel real lucky that you got a chance to experience it. And so it's just something that you feel very special in your life, and you get to keep doing it. And you're like, I still want to keep doing it. And it was neat, it's always, when Father Coke would write you a birthday card and send you happy birthday with the P and the smiley face in it, and call you up on your birthday, and you're just like, this is really special to get this gift.
Well, the unique part is the alums help the alums. So, my son who graduated wanted to get into Annapolis in the worst way. Who steps up to help him out? Pat Walsh. What 4-star admiral is going to meet a kid at Starbucks to sit and talk about the experience where this guy is sitting there nonchalant? My son called me when he left. He goes, Dad, I had a 4-star admiral staring me down, telling me this is the way to proceed. And it's like, there's no other school that's going to, the alum's going to take the time out of their day to talk to a kid. And the neat part was Pat didn't let it go at that one conversation. There were multiple conversations. There was a follow-up. When he didn't get in, he called him and he said, "You'll find a way. I know you will." Sure enough, he did. So it's one of those where there's a lot of pride. And I didn't go to school with Pat. I went to school with Danny, but it was just we're going to help each other out.
A story about the sense of community that I think we all feel in high school, at home. Home was always chaos for me, and Jesuit was my safe place. And I remember after particularly tough argument I had with my father. I was at a school function, and Father Gonzalez noticed that I was clearly not doing well, and he came and grabbed me. This was on a Saturday, and I basically had 4 hours of psychotherapy. The fact that he was able to see that, to be present enough and aware enough to see that I was struggling, and to pull me aside and to have a long conversation and to be that one that was coaching me and encouraging me and pushing me along the way was remarkable. So it's a huge support network, family.
Yeah, it gets said a lot, but it can't be said enough, is the faculty relationship, and it's been brought up a number of times just tonight. But the faculty at Jesuit makes it fosters that community, and they're critical to I think making Jesuit what it is, and the way Jesuit puts the faculty in front of the kids in ways that any other school can't do. I mean, you have retreats where who's there? It's not parents, it's the faculty who's telling stories about their lives and opening up to you in ways you just get of course through your teachers and your coaches as well. But I spent some of my best time up here was after class talking to teachers. I spent hours with Donahue after history class. It was great, and I think those conversations, and Jeff Dillon had a lot to do with it too, made me such a different person today, and made me look at the other side of the argument. And I think community service and everything that we're exposed to, and being in other environments, Jesuit puts that in, it gives that to us, and it doesn't mean we're all going to turn out to be great people, but it gives you the opportunity to be a much better person than when you started.
Guys, I just appreciate y'all opening up and sharing that. That means a lot to us, and I think the community is what it's all about. And all of our alumni, we have over 11,000 living alums. You all being so active in it, you're part of the brotherhood. So thank y'all for being a part of this. This is home. Welcome home.